Welcome back. Well, ANC Secretary-General Ace Magashule has been in Venezuela as the international debate intensifies about whether there should be action to remove the current president there, Nicholas Maduro. The South African Communist Party has now also sent a delegation to that country. Maduro says that he won a presidential election last year. The leader of the opposition, Juan Guido, claims that he's the interim president because he was elected leader of the Congress. He claims the presidential election was stolen by Maduro. The first Deputy General Secretary of the South African Communist Party is Mapaila. He's in our studios for you now. Solly, good evening. Thanks so much for coming in.
Good evening, Stephen. Good evening to the viewers as well.
Why have you sent a delegation to Venezuela?
It's important to express our solidarity with the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela. It's one of the few socialist states in Latin America, together with Cuba and Nicaragua. And all of these states are under threat by the U.S. government, which can't accept a progressive and a democratic socialist system right under their nose, which is quite successful. As you can see, for instance, if you were to measure several indicators, human development indicators between these three states, you will see the huge difference. And of course, the U.S. has, over the years, rejected any existence of socialism in Latin America.
You would say that there's certain human development indicators that show that Venezuela is a success?
Yeah, of course. Quite a huge success, particularly since President Hugo Chavez introduced socialism together with the PSUV, as well as the people of Venezuela, because they are the one that demanded the introduction of socialism. And during that particular period, there's a squatter camp in Venezuela, which used to be the biggest. In fact, I think it's still the biggest in Latin America. It's called Petare. They managed to change that area overnight. Millions of houses were introduced there, transportation system, health system, right in the squatter camp, which has now completely is becoming a different area, which the capitalist system in Venezuela had never attempted to change it. As a result, the people began to see the changes that socialism can bring, and many other advantages and developments that were introduced in Venezuela. The economic system, for instance, the ownership of the economy by the generality of the people, and of course the sharing of oil, which was largely a preserve of some monopolies with special transportation of oil to the Americas, but now is benefiting the people of Venezuela, and that's what the U.S. government doesn't want to accept.
We'll come to oil in a moment. I'm sure you'll have plenty to say about it. You say that Venezuela, that human beings have developed more. In other words, human development indicators have developed more. The average person in Venezuela has lost 11 kilograms in the last year. That's under the government of Nicholas Maduro.
No, I think...
that's Reuters. I found that in Reuters. It's been widely quoted fact.
Of course, they will try and do that because over the last 2-3 years, since the previous elections, in fact, which the PSUV did lose, and they accepted the lose of that particular election, but then they later on won the provincial elections. They also lost the national legislative elections, which, by the way, in South Africa, this question has not been reported properly because Venezuela has the highest number of elections anywhere else than anywhere else in the world. The presidential elections, National Assembly elections, these are separate elections, as well as governorship elections, that is for your premiers, for local government, and so forth. So they've got quite a whole lot of elections, and they've got one of the best democratic systems, electoral-wise, electronic system, where you are able to produce results overnight. So I think during this last 3 years...
A lot of people hearing electronic, if we look at our history, might suggest that leaves it open to manipulation.
No, not in Venezuela. It's both electronic. You compare, once you have voted, a ticket comes out, you put it in the box, and you have already stamped in electronically. So even the counting. So the counting, first you press the button, it gives you the results instant, and thereafter you go and compare what is in the box and what is in the thing. And all those things, if they tally, there's no crisis. And this is what has happened with the presidential election. There's no basis why the U.S. government has intervened in this regard. But coming to your point about loss of kilograms, what has happened over the last 2-3 years has been that the U.S. government has literally paid business people to hoard in the wholesale places various foodstuffs, non-perishable foodstuffs. And as a consequence, they paid those people what they were making per month, and they declare that particular product is coming to an end.
I just want to make sure I understand you. So the food is actually in Venezuela, and the Americans are paying business people not to distribute it, not to sell it.
Exactly.
Really? Do you have proof?
Yes, we have proof.
What proof?
It has been going on for quite some time. I didn't bring any particular kind of a thing, but actually I visited Venezuela, for instance, to go and observe the previous elections, and we were able, I was there, for instance, when the opposition, which was supported by the US government, won Caracas, for instance, the capital city. And when we arrived there, in fact, when we wrote an article, when we came back, we called it the toilet paper revolution, because at that week, they've hoarded toilet paper. It was not available. Immediately, the opposition won the results. The following day, trucks were all over delivering toilet paper in the supermarkets and everywhere else. This is exactly what they continue to do with various foodstuffs, with rice and other non-perishable foodstuffs. So it's an orchestrated system to remove a socialist, a developing socialist system that the people were beginning to fully enjoy, and then want now to frustrate that process.
Okay, I mean, if it was run so well before this particular crisis started, why did 2 million people leave Venezuela?
In the context of what the U.S. government has done, I mean, you have noticed that...
So it's all the U.S. government's fault? All of it?
Not any other country will have its own challenges there and there, but at the core of what's happening is that the socialist system has been entrenched and people are beginning to receive services. In any case, many capitalists can't live under socialist system. They are not used to a system where the objective of production is changed from profit maximization to serving the people. They are not used to that. So when these things is taking shape, those who over the years have supported that kind of a system, they don't have a reason to share in that, including those from outsiders, including Richard Branson, for instance, who sponsored the mob in Colombia that has been even burning trucks and everything else with the notion that these are in Venezuela. In fact, this international news media have broadcasted wrong things saying that they are happening in Venezuela, and the Venezuelan government managed to broadcast satellite images showing the borderline where there's Venezuela, there's Colombia, and where the problems were, which were reported all over the world as if it is in Venezuela. Absolutely lies.
Okay, I will give you a minute to talk about oil in America, I promise. But I do want to just put it to this. I mean, Nicholas Maduro also, you can judge countries by their economic performance, but also their levels of freedom. Freedom is very important.
Yeah, of course.
He stopped the opposition leader, or he tried to stop the opposition leader from leaving the country. I mean, who stops someone from leaving a country? Surely that's not the act of a freedom-loving leader.
No, that's actually impossible. If you read the Venezuelan constitution, even the president, for him to leave the country, he has to get a permission from the National Assembly, which at the moment Maduro doesn't control.
Okay, but there was a travel ban imposed on the leader of the opposition, who's not the president, in your view.
No, because of the court process in which the court felt that it is against the Venezuelan constitution for someone to declare himself president of the republic and to have a mock, or what you call a mock inauguration that violates the constitution. In many other countries, we have been long in jail. It's sedation for someone to come and do something like that when actually a president has been proclaimed properly and constitutionally and so forth. By the way, it's very, very critical, Steve, that we learn the Venezuelan democratic system, because you'll see that, for instance, the president to leave the country gets the permission of the National Assembly, and in this case is these fellows, and sometimes they reject him to leave on many occasions. But in this case, this one is the judges. In fact, Venezuela, the Independent Electoral Commission is not something, is different from in other capitalist countries. Not appointed even by the president. It's elected through, it's an independent system, fully elected. It has its own years of service and so forth. Democratic institution, ingrained amongst the people, working very well. The US can accept that, and they launch this massive offensive. Let the US leave Venezuela. You will see how freedom reigns in Venezuela. You will see how economic development reigns in Venezuela. And before President Chavez left or died, we were seeing that.
Okay. I did promise I'd let you talk about oil. Venezuela's huge oil reserves. Do you think that's part of the American interest here?
Of course, that's their number one interest. Venezuela has more oil than even the Arab countries. Even. Exactly. So they can't leave that. If that is, in fact, now it's been nationalized. I was in Venezuela. You pay 8 cents per liter of petrol, for instance, the last 2 years when I was there. One of the cheapest in the world, available for the masses. Unfortunately, during that time when I was there, petrol was very cheap, but foodstuff, because they are awarded by the capitalists, sponsored by the Americans, were expensive. So as a result, the system has to continuously respond effectively. And ultimately, the people have realized when the opposition won some of the big cities, how they treated the masses. That's why in the response, particularly when they went to the provincial elections, there was massive turnaround of things. And when it came to the presidential elections, Maduro was brought back again with an overwhelming 67% of the vote. He's a fully democratically elected president of Venezuela, and we should reject the U.S. government to violate international law and also to undermine the constitutionality of Venezuela and to seek to regime change in that particular country. That's the principle that we sent our delegation there to go and defend, is to show strength of solidarity and defend the sovereignty of Venezuela. But it's not only South African Communist Party delegation, it's an alliance delegation. There's ANC members there, there's COSATU leaders as well, and various affiliates of COSATU who have constituted that part of delegation.
Solly Mapaila, thank you very much indeed. Do enjoy the engagement. Solly Mapaila is the Second Deputy General Secretary of the South African Communist Party.